The Young Voter League exists to engage young adults in the process of electoral politics. Basically, we understand politics to be decision-making. Decisions as to who's included in what, who's excluded from what, who gets what, and who doesn't get much of what. We must be at the table when decisions are being made that affect our lives. We have a saying, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. So, we work to build the builders, the future stewards of our community, to educate them, increase their awareness and engagement in the civic and political processes that affect our lives. I'd like to start by sharing a quote which means a lot to me. And it goes like this. It says, "We must understand the politics of our community, and we must know what politics is supposed to produce. We must know what part politics play in our lives. And until we become politically mature, we will always be misled, led astray, deceived, or maneuvered into supporting someone politically who doesn't have the good of our community at heart." That was Malcolm X in 1964.
Thank you, Mal.
And I think that...
We have 4 contenders here vying for position to represent you on the Seattle School Board. For position 5, we have Mary Bass versus K. Smith-Blum. For position 7, we have Betty Patu versus Wilson Chinn. All 4 of these candidates will have a minute and a half to give an opening statement. And during the opening statement, they will answer a question that I will also present. But before that, I'm going to give you a little description of what it is these people do as school board members. The school board, in addition to approving school district budget plans, influences what Seattle's children learn, the actual textbooks they use, what programs are funded at which schools stay open, and which are closed. And they are also responsible for evaluating the performance of Superintendent Maria Goodloe Johnson. This is an unpaid position. So candidates, starting with Ms. K. Smith-Blum, please make your opening statement and answer the following question. The academic achievement gap has existed and been intentionally enforced throughout America's history. Students of color, and in particular African American males, suffer from high rates of low academic achievement, special education placement, suspensions and expulsions, and low rates of participation in accelerated learning programs. What actions have you taken professionally and in your community to address this achievement gap and racial disparity that exists among students in the Seattle Public Schools? And what is your plan for going forward?
Thank you all for turning out. I so appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, and I'm so glad that Amber asked the question she did, because that's what my platform is all about. I'm a product of public schools, just so you know. I grew up in Austin, Texas. I went to the only high school in Austin, Texas that didn't have to be integrated, because in my high school it was already pretty much a third, Hispanic, African American, and Caucasian. I grew up in a world of incredibly dedicated teachers, people who prepared all of us, no matter what our ethnicity was, for whatever path we wanted to take. But even in those days in Austin, Texas, there were the disparities that Amber has talked about. My entire platform for extending the school day, for delivering core academic classes in the hours when kids learn, for elementary school kids that's earlier in the morning, for adolescents that is the center of the day, and for wrapping our arms around the 5,000 kids that do not have access to early learning, because that's the only way we are going to draw a line in the sand and stop the dropout rate, is all about all those things are about closing what is not really an achievement gap, it's an opportunity gap. And the way to do that is to create the political will in this city, which I think exists right now in this moment.
A real brief background piece. I'm a 50-year resident of the Central area. My parents are retired educators. My father was the principal of many of the schools in the central area. My mother was also an educator. I went to Madrona, Catherine Blaine, which is on Magnolia. I also went to Nathan Hill for 1 year, but I am a proud graduate of Garfield High School. I attended the University of Washington, the other room, and I got my degree in my undergraduate's in economics, and my master's is environmental economics. The focus is policies, my big piece. But really quickly, when you're dealing with African-American male children, I would start absolutely with special ed. We have overprescribed children to special ed for many years. This is not new. So black and brown male children occupy many more seats in special ed over time. It is a demoralizer in a lot of ways because a lot of those young men know they should not be in special ed. But once we're able to identify them clinically with the needs and what they really need to be there for, and I don't mean an upset day at the age of 8 because they had an outburst and then they are progressive through the system with the same label. They get that label until they're 18 and through the system. But I would start there right away to get them placed properly. I think that's a morale builder. I think it will open up space certainly to deal with our more clinically disabled children, but our bilingual children are also treated that way because they don't speak English and they don't address the American society in the same way. Some are very shy, some look at authority very differently. And that cultural piece, that sensitivity and awareness about culture, heritage, language, upbringing is absolutely critical, and you have to experience that, you have to be of that.
I come with 32 plus years of education working for Seattle Public Schools. I've been down below and up above and actually know exactly what's been going on in Seattle Public Schools, and I'm out. And I've worked with a lot of at-risk kids. As a matter of fact, the very student that you're talking about is kids that I've worked with for many, many years in the Seattle Public Schools. One of the ways that I have actually been able to help these kids is providing them an opportunity by providing programs that actually help them to see what is it that we're really trying to teach them. And one of the things that I also like to see happening is that making sure that teachers that teach to our kids have high expectation of our children. No matter who it is, they need to have that high expectation, so when that child walks through that classroom, that they know exactly that those teachers are going to be able to give them the same expectation as they have for other kids. And I believe that unless we do that, we'll never be able to resolve the problem that we have with our kids. And another thing too is that, sometimes, you have to get out of the mold and actually get out of the box and be more creative, and or for you to be able to reach out to these kids. And one of the things that I've done is that in order for us to cut down suspension rate at our school, I call parents to help me to be partnership to help us decide what kind of punishment do we want to give their kids. Instead of us suspending our kids so they can have more time to go out there and plan some more, whatever you suspend them for, they can go out there to the house and try to figure out what's another way to come back with a more better way of doing it. We need to provide them an opportunity so we can be able to teach them ways of how they can learn not to be doing the same thing over again. So parent partnership is what I do, and I think that's the best way to be able to collaborate in partnership. Sorry.
Well, thank you very much for having us here. Just real briefly, I'm a Beacon Hill boy. I grew up on Beacon Hill, went to Columbia, Mercer, and Cleveland. I have 4 kids. 2 of them have graduated from Franklin. I have 1 left at Franklin and a girl at Mercer. So I'm committed to public schools. Public schools is where it is at. And that being said, where it's not at is for kids of color. And we are doing our kids a disservice in terms of the disproportionality that exists amongst our kids of color. So how are we going to get to that? How are we going to address that issue? Well, we have to address it by being very intentional in terms of looking at where that disproportionality exists. At Kimball, I've done research, and because by profession, I am a geek, I am a scientist, so I look at data. But I was looking at the data at Kimball in terms of the disproportionality for certain kids of color, and it was disgraceful. And so what we need to do is we need to look at those specific instances, we address and attack those issues in terms of looking at administrative remedies that we need to look at in terms of cultural competency, especially of our teachers, because that is essentially where we are getting not only that academic gap, but it's the discipline gap, and it's a expectation gap.